My fire so tires. How we doing out fire? It's your boy Demarcus. I had to bring out the true down south country voice, that country boy. What's going on, Facetiers? I gotta have some enthusiasm and some humor, man. Especially when folks are coming into my podcast, because I'm a goofy person and I love to have fun. Like, stuff being serious all the time is just never been a part of my MO, and it's like you got to have that balance. Some people be like, oh, well, you shouldn't take everything serious, but many people do take everything serious. And for me, I'm just like, why not have some fun? And then know when to turn it on and turn it off. So, man, shout out to y'all for the ones that have been rocking with me. I still think I'm at 3 supporters on the Spotify side at least. Let me see. I think it says I got. Let me see, baby. So yes, it says I got 3 Spotify followers. So I may have some folks on the Apple Podcast side, but I'm not sure. But we've been at 3 for a minute, so I was about to say I got to figure out a way to get that up, but I don't, because I'm just sharing parts of my life and my story where I can look back and reflect on, and over time we definitely gonna go up, because when people want to know about my mentality and just know about my life, they can come back to this. And so these type of episodes are going to be timeless, but that is here nor there. Now, I want to get into today's episode, and I was just thinking about some things that I know are important to me, and I spoke on them a bit in the past few episodes, but I really want to talk about how I broke into investing with no mentor, no trust fund. And this is not going to be some like big type of advice where, a millionaire is talking to you about, about how to get rich and all that type of stuff. Like, I'm just literally talking from a perspective of how my mind has over time grown in a way where I've allowed myself to utilize my resources to at least gain understanding about things that are in front of me. And, when I think about specifically, we can go ahead and get into it, but when I think about investing, this is something that I thought about in college. So we're talking about almost, man, it's been since I started college. It was 11 years ago since I started college, and next year is about to be 12. That is crazy to see how much time has flown by. But when I think about the concept of money, that's something that's just always been top of mind. It's something that I've always been curious about when it comes to how businesses work, how wealth happens within families, and how people are able to allow their wealth to continue to grow over time. And I remember when I was younger, and oftentimes, you're in environments, especially from a Black household, and you're seeing how folks are moving. Like, you're seeing the good thing about my environment, is that it's cold out. It's been cold outside, so my throat is just dry. But the good thing about environments where I come from, even though it's a very small rural town, and it's a mostly, like, I would say, white type of town, you do have a good amount of Black families, and you don't think about it when you're younger because it's not talked about as much, but you have a lot of Black ownership. And so there's areas where you see like a lot of Black folks owning homes, and it doesn't matter. I don't even think about it as somebody has like a bigger home or smaller home. Like, the fact that Black folks have ownership is beautiful. And you think about certain restaurants and businesses, and these are all things that are very, very important. But what often happens is that when you think about life from a point of scarcity, when you think about just how the world moves and just politics and all that type of stuff, oftentimes it puts you in this mindset that it's not as important as other things in the world. But when we think about ownership, these are some very valuable pieces of information to have. You think about equity in a home. Oftentimes folks are just thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to buy a home. It's just a place to live. But no, a lot of folks may not even know how much equity that they have in a home. And people may not even know what they can utilize that for in order to be able to elevate their lives or to be able to, invest into other things. It's just because our folks aren't having these type of conversations. And so now, as I'm older and I'm thinking about it, I'm just like, man, with all these people in certain environments, just imagine if folks even came together and even had seminars, webinars, or just understandings of how their wealth can be able to expand. And just imagine how much better and how much better our communities would be and how much longer the money will spread. Now, we always have to think back to just all the crazy BS that's happened in the world and just the tragedies and stuff like that in regard to how our people have been behind for so many years. But when I think about as far as the state of today, we've got to think about how can we continue to educate ourselves and move forward. Like, we are resilient people. We are people that we've shown time and time again that even when our backs have been against the wall and when the world has treated us in the ways in which they have, out of our control and all this type of stuff, that we still are the blueprints to this world. And so, when I think about as far as even like going out and getting money, oftentimes it's discussed in a way where it's like, okay, go get you a job and you can kind of just take care of things, your bills, and be able to live your life. But we often don't talk about how we can, again, grow our money and be able to allow it to have longevity. And so for myself, when I was back in college, and it's crazy when you think about it, because when time passes by and you learn, you're like, man, I could have been doing some of these things before, but my mind just wasn't allowing me to shape. My mind wasn't allowing me to think of it in that type of way, but that's part of life. Like, you always got to grow and you have to be able to learn for the next time. So I remember when I was in college, and I talked about this, but when I first started to actually get money was whenever I was I worked my freshman year. After my freshman year, I didn't work my freshman year. So after my freshman year of college, I came back home, and then I was working at a plant called Hitachi back home. And so Hitachi is I think it's a Japanese brand, but they do like car parts and auto parts and stuff like that. But a friend of mine at the time had been actually working there, and I had known a few other people, but I went through a tip agency, and my parents had put me onto the tip agency thing. And it's like, DeMarcus, like, this is what you can do. Like, go down to Kelly Services, talk to them, and they can get you on, and then you start working immediately. So I went down there, and then I think the job that I had was only paying like $12 or $13 an hour or something like that, but the job was about 80 hours a week. And so as a college student, going in my freshman year, I think my parents wanted me to really get that experience and not have to work. But my mindset was always on leveling up and how can I be able to have my own? Because I had gotten to the point in high school where, man, I just got tired of having to rely on people for rides. And, when I eventually got my whip, around my junior year, my parents was able to get that for me. It was like this Ford Taurus. I think it was like a couple thousand they got for it. Man, I love that car to death. Like, that was such a dope car, and I ended up getting into a wreck in college that totaled it. But just thinking about like upgrading my life and all that, like, it just felt so. It felt so dope. I eventually totaled it, but this is the story is going to kind of go in just in how like I was able to kind of be able to build myself, but. Yeah, like, it was just being able to have my own things and being able to make my own decisions was key, because I'm like, I just am tired of relying on my parents and just seeing how life moves. You're not understanding the financial troubles and things that your family may go through, and you're learning as they are too. And oftentimes as far as families and stuff, there can be mistakes and stuff that they're making over the years, but you are thinking for yourself in a growth mindset. How can I get my own so I can be in control? And I will say that's one thing for me that even when it comes to my parents, they didn't necessarily even have to like push on to me. I just liked having my own, and having to learn what that looked like was something that I had to grow into and something I had to really see for myself. So went down to Hitachi. This was after the summer after my freshman year, worked about 80 to 90 hours a week. And so with that, I'm getting paid. I'm getting lowball. So if I'm getting paid, let's see, if I'm working 80 hours a week, doing that times, yeah, so if I'm doing 80 hours a week, let's see, then I think after a certain period, maybe after I think 40 hours, I was getting time and a half, I think maybe. So I'm realistically bringing in, let's see, I was probably bringing in about 12 to 1300 a week. And so I probably did this for about a good, maybe a good 2 months. So as a college student, I feel like I'm balling, because now, I mean, even though I'm working like crazy, I still got this money, and then like I'm not really having no bills, and I can really just take care of things that I need to. But here's the thing though, early on, this was what helped me to learn how to grind and take care of my stuff. So as I was doing that, so I was working from, I believe it was maybe 5 in the evening to 5 in the morning. And so I'm doing like 12-hour shifts. I'm doing 12 hours, I think it was Monday through Friday, 12 hours. Saturday, it was 10 hours, and maybe Sunday was 8. I think I was working literally every day. I can't remember fully. I have to go back and see, but I think it was literally that's how many hours that I was moving. So I think it was 12 times 5, 10, then 8. Then I was picking up some extra hours. So yeah, that was it. I was working every day. And then when I would get off of the like around 5 in the morning, I would come home and then I would have a couple summer classes because then I wanted to try to get ahead on some things. But then also my freshman year, I was kind of like not doing the best that I should have with some courses. So I had to really make sure that I was keeping up so I didn't get too behind. And so actually I ended up failing one of the classes and the one I ended up barely passing. But still, that was I thought that was just dope for myself, even that I passed one, because the amount of work that I was putting in doing 12 hours and then still getting up and doing that. And then also even working out, like that just changed my mindset. And when I even think about working out, like even where I've gotten to now, during those moments, I'm always thinking about how can I maximize my time. One thing that DeMarcus is not like is stalled time where it's not moving. And so in those moments, I'm like, if I'm gonna be on the job and I'm trying to lose weight, I'm already gonna be here. So let me figure out how I can take the extra route to get more steps in, to be able to do it to my advantage. I was doing push-ups. I was getting in tons of steps. And so this is where I first learned how to build that mentality as far as being able to control your time and being able to lose weight without having to do all these extra things or whatever. I'm just like, let me do it in the space that I'm in. And so that was how I first started to really get some money. And that's also like when I was able to get some additions to my car. I remember going out and buying me a system and then buying me some hubcaps. I felt like I was a shit. Like I felt like I was so hype off that. And then one of the old heads from the hood and my pops and uncle and them knew, he ended up putting my subs into my car at the shop. And it's funny, I even, for my Ford Taurus, I ended up, man, that had ended up, it worked the whole time that I had the Taurus. No issues, no nothing. Had it in there rocking. And then I even moved that same system to the Honda Accord that I had. But that was just a whole like dope experience because there wasn't too many kids that was like, I don't even know anybody for real that was like being able just to put time and energy into their own stuff, unless they were kind of doing jobs like that. But man, I'm over here like a college student and I'm being able to go ahead and fund my own thing. So I was like, in which I felt, and my friends could probably attest to this, I was like the first guy that like had his own stuff. I had, when I was working at Sprint eventually, I had like 2 phones, I was able to buy all these different things. And it wasn't even ever out of like a flex or nothing like that, but I was really putting the work in, and I was just thinking from an entrepreneurial and from a growth mindset early on. And while other folks was just going to school and that was it, like, it's funny how my mind always kind of felt like it kind of felt like I was not really doing the right thing, even though now I'm like, man, I was doing the best thing, because you're often told like, hey, go to school, get your grades, and that's it. But the way in which I was grinding, I'm thinking more of how the real world is moving. And I'm glad that I know that now, because at the time I didn't think about that. Like when you're going through school, oftentimes you're thinking about going and getting the perfect grades and that getting straight A's, or getting high level of B's or however is going to be really the marker for life as regard to success. And it's not, because if you look truly at the world, the people that are the most successful, the people that may have the most money, a lot of times these folks didn't even go to college, and let alone they may have even flunked out at some point or had the worst grades. And that's the reason being is because when you're going to school and you're doing homework, you're getting graded on the work that you're given and the test that you're given. When you think about the world and how you're shaping things, there's logistics, there's analytics, there's data, there's all different types of things that you have to utilize your mindset for, and then that creates a whole different entity there, which is not something that you just tested on. Like you're building systems, you're learning human connection, and all these things that you're utilizing is creating something greater. And then that's how people are able to be successful. That's totally different than you just studying for a test. And oftentimes the test that you may be studying for, or the work that you're studying or to complete, that may have nothing to do with what's going to be provided as far as for real world application. So aside from that, for myself, I just always was able to have this mentality that I just feel like I deserve more. And then I would just see how families were moving and how my family, and I'm just like, there's got to be a way in which we can have more. There's got to be like this. There can't just be this one blueprint that certain people are going through, and then that Black people ain't going through where you can't get. I'm like, there's got to be something more. And so for me, over time, I would just literally get on YouTube's. I'm looking at books, and I'm just seeing that like, okay, this is how people are doing it. Now, when it comes to actually putting your money into a business and stuff like that, it takes time. It takes understanding of loans and banks and all that to be able to grow and be able to use your credit. But still, I'm like, there's no way that this can't happen for me and my people. It's just, again, that we don't know about it. So going back to, I ended up doing the summer classes, like I said, I passed one, the other one I didn't. So then it comes to like my sophomore year. And so I ended up, when was it, my sophomore year? I ended up, I think it was 2016 was my June, let's see. So my sophomore year, I ended up working at the IT place on campus. So for me, when it comes to my background, like folks know, like I'm like a computer nerd, I'm an IT type of guy. But for me, I was like, I don't want to be around a desk just doing computer work for forever. That's just never really been fun to me, just like figuring out people's issues all the time. Like I'll do it in my spare time, but like it's not something I want to do for a career. But it was good with that experience. And shout out to Miss Karen and her and Mark down in the iTech Connect, because I was able to even mingle with other students and faculty. And that was really good exposure to just get me in the realm of being able to, one, have a college job, which was huge, but then also just being able just to get on my feet. Because as a college student, like this is when I started to have to pay rent. This is when I'm having to really start to take care of my bills. I remember for the longest, my parents and my dad would be like, man, we got to get some things figured out on the bill. Are you using this and that? I said, Dad, I've been off the bill. Like I've been taking care of my own bills, to the point, even a couple years later, he'd be like, man, what's going on with the bill? I said, I've been off y'all's bill. So for me, I had already been in the mindset of already doing different things. But I love that job because, one, it allowed me just to be able to go in and be able just to learn things early on. And man, I'm telling you, I was spending so much money at McAllister's all the time and get cookies and mashed potatoes and some different sandwiches because it was right there. But that was a great experience, again, because it allowed me to really have kind of like that first mini type of tech job, I guess you can say, or not tech job, any kind of corporate job, because when I was working at Hitachi, that's manufacturing and that's like, assembly line work. But this was a job where I was at a desk and I'm in school. So I'm only working part-time hours. So I'm not really getting as much, but it's allowed me to kind of get that feel of what corporate could even look like, right? So fast forward, this is where I'm starting to level up. So I ended up ramping up my hours. And so they had iTech Connect was downstairs, but then they had help desk, which was upstairs, but I was doing that during the summer. So then I was doing iTech Connect and help desk. And so the thing is, when I started doing both of those, actually, iTech Connect, I don't think I could do that during the year because trying to remember. I don't think I could do that during the year because school wasn't in session. So help desk is what was going on. The thing with help desk, I started to do that for a minute, but then I eventually ended up getting a job at Sprint. So let me check my LinkedIn. So this is how it is for me. Oftentimes I love to be able to have conversation. I love to be able to go into certain topics, but there are moments where I get so excited that I sometimes forget the timelines. And then I end up rambling, and then I'm not able to give the specific type of day. So when I go to iTech Connect, let's see when that was, because I'm going to make sure I'm giving it to y'all the real raw. So iTech Connect. So that was, I did that around 2015 of August. So that was, like I said, Hitachi. That was the summer after my freshman year. So that would have been 2015. So then I did the iTech Connect. Then going into the summer, I ended up doing the help desk. So I was ended up getting a job there. So I ended up doing that maybe for just like a few weeks. Now here's where it kind of is switched up. So then I ended up started working. I got a job at Sprint. And so at Sprint, I was, at Sprint, I had applied to them multiple times, and I was like, man, I want a sales job. You can make a mission here. And I'm like, let me see if I can get into this. So I'd applied to Sprint multiple times. I'd applied to T-Mobile at the time. I applied to Verizon, all those, and wasn't getting any type of callbacks. And so I eventually ended up getting a breakthrough at Sprint. And so at first, they were going to try to get me at the one kind of close to me. What was that street? I forgot where it was. It was closer to U of L, but then I ended up working at the one on Preston Highway. So as I ended up getting this job, this was around the mid part of 2016. I'm still doing the help desk. So what ended up happening was, because I had to make sure that I was going to the Sprint job, it kind of messed up because the overlap wasn't really working in the way that I wanted it to. And so the one of the ladies upstairs, which was different than the one I have, the Miss Karen from iTech Connect, she ended up kind of like getting on me or just feeling the type of way, or trying to like go off or something like that. And she was like, we're gonna have to like let you go or whatever. So I was like, man, it is what it is. So I ended up was able to work there for like a few weeks, being able to get that check and a little bit of Sprint while I was training. And then I ended up having to like let that go because there's just conflict as far as with the scheduling and stuff like that. So, but I will say, when I was working upstairs at the help desk, this was a true turning point for me, because at least iTech Connect downstairs, it was clean. It was just Miss Karen, it was Mark, and it was just like real chill, not too much like going on. Man, upstairs, that gave me the true like corporate vibes, because that's where like your whole IT department was. And then when you go to the back where the help desk is, man, you're just seeing so many people that was overweight. You're seeing food bags everywhere. You're just like, people just coming in kind of grouchy. And, you know, that can be with your typical work, but it just felt like one of those things where I'm like, there's just no energy. Like, this is all people are doing. And that may not seem like much to some people, but I know for folks that think like me, it's just like, you want to be in environments where you can feel that you're being able to really grow, and you're being able to bring out your best self. Like, being in a space like that to get your money up for a short period of time is cool, but you don't want to come into environments where you just feel as if there's no growth, you just feel like stagnancy, or you just feel as if people are just there and not willing to grow. Like, you got to be in spaces where it challenges your mind and where it allows you to grow. If not, you just get complacent with the check, and you feel like life is passing you by. And I was just like, that's just not where I want to be. No disrespect to those folks, but at the end of the day, when you just letting time pass by, and then, you know, you just having the same conversations, and then people are coming in and just acting as if like they're victims of life, and everything just like, there's just no positivity and energy in their conversations, and they're just making excuses all the time. You're looking at people that's there for 15 to 20 years, and they're just like, yeah, this is just what it is. It's just like, it's just how life is. And like, damn, you just making excuses, but you're not even trying to level up. And I'm just like, even in this short period, I'm hearing some of those conversations. I said, this is not something I could see myself doing forever. Like, there's no way that this is just how people just deem their life, and they don't want to grow in any type of way. So anyways, I started working at Sprint. And it was like I said, I had applied to these sales roles multiple times. And so when you're working at a place like Sprint, you coming in, you ain't making nothing. I think the base pay was like 15 an hour or something like that. So as you can tell, like, that's really low. But again, for a college student, you can make commission as well. That's huge. So really, I would say for like my first couple of years, like, I was really getting into the weeds of it. Like, I was just doing my thing and just like trying to figure a lot out, but I was making some pretty solid commission. So I would say definitely around like year 2, year 3, there was some month I was making like 2 to 3K in commissions. I think I may have got my highest as like 4K. So it got to a point to where, as a college student, I was making cheese. And I was a part-time employee beating out full-time employees on full-time quotas too. So even though I'm working part-time hours, which is probably like 20 or so hours a week, let's see, if I'm doing 15, I'm doing 20. So then with the commissions, I'm bringing in some solid money. And I think I said in one of my podcasts that there was like one point where I had made up to like, I think I seen on my W-2 was like 35 or 40K or something like that. But I mean, man, that was because I was just putting in some work. And I think that was towards the end of Sprint. But that was work where I was putting in a lot of work, though. Like, I was continuing just to get into my bag, but it wasn't like that for the first couple of years. Now, I will say this, though. So this is where you learn about money. So for me, I'm always taking it to another level. So I'm learning about investments. I'm learning about how taxes and things work. And so I was looking and I was like, man, you see where oftentimes when it comes to different jobs, most people will oftentimes you're having them to take out taxes from state and from federal. And then I looked online and I was like, okay, well, I'm kind of curious about what it looks like for commission-based roles and like if they actually tax the same. What I seen was that companies can tax anywhere from, I believe it's like 20 to 50% on commissions. So I said, bro, this is crazy. So I said, they're taxing way more on commissions. And so this was a learning point for me early on. So what I ended up doing is I said, I wanted to withhold from taxes. Now, this is where I had moved in a situation I was doing it way too early, because with my wages and stuff that I was getting, they weren't taking out any taxes. So I was having a high amount of money, especially for like a college student. So, and because of the commissions and things that I was making, like my checks and stuff were looking nice, but I still knew in my head that I'm having to eventually save some money. Now, the thing was, and this is where you have to really learn financial literacy, because, and I'm glad that I've learned certain steps on this early, even as I continue to move forward and I'm figuring things out in my adulthood, it still allows me to be able to understand how to do things properly. So that was an experience where when tax time came around, I had owed really a decent amount of money compared to how much that I was making. And I was kind of backtracking there. So I was like, man, tax time came around and I'm still trying to kind of scramble to be able to find this money that I need for my taxes. How I challenged myself was I said, okay, the next year, we're going to go ahead and let them take out the taxes and not withhold. And so the crazy thing is, when I compared apples to oranges, I seen that when they took taxes out, they took out way more than when I had them to not withhold taxes, because my commissions, because they were like so high, they weren't even really taxing those. So honestly, whenever they were taking out they were taking out way more taxes when I had them to remove the taxes than when I had them to not withhold. So if I was just able to save up enough money and not spend it, bro, I would have been like way ahead. I would have been way more ahead than if they would have took out taxes. But that's the thing, you have to set the money aside. And so what ended up happening is that it got to a point to where even with what I was making, eventually I think I may get like a small return. But then the third year, I ended up going back into where I had them to not take out any taxes. I had them to withhold, and then I ended up going into a similar position that I did the first year. And so for me, this kind of like set me back a bit, even though I'm making a good amount of money, living like a really, dope way as far as a college student. And this is where it was kind of my first steps into understanding how financial literacy really has to work, because I wasn't even really spending my money on like crazy stuff. Like I was able to like afford traveling for myself. I paid for all my own trips when it came to going to Cancun, when it came to going to Fort Lauderdale, when it came to going to South Padres. I was able to pay for all those, even when it came to going to trips and visiting friends in Michigans. And I was paying for stuff everywhere. I paid for my own gas. I don't think I've ever not filled up my tank of my car without a full tank. Like I just always was just making sure that I had those taken care of, paying for my rent in college, paying for my phone stuff, taking care of tax. Like I was doing all my own stuff. And not even until I got older, as far as just a season that I've been in, is where I've had to lean on family for support. Like this is the first time I've ever in my life had to be like, hey, like I actually, need y'all to help me out, because it's been a struggle. I never had to do that, and it's not anything wrong with that at all. It's just that was great for me to learn how to be independent and learn what that looks like. But asking for help, that's one thing that I needed to be able to do, because as you get older, you even realize even if you have the money, it's about understanding how to be able to grow it and be efficient with it. Asking for help is a great thing. And it's just that you have to learn and be around the people that are willing to help you in a way to where it's not a burden. Because oftentimes, like if you're asking certain people, they're going to hold it over your head and they're going to make it seem as if like you owe them something. But the ones that are truly locked in with you, they're not going to look at it from that way. So anyways, not to get too far off topic, but so I was doing that this spring. I was like, man, okay, I'm making some good money in college. Like I'm saying there was times I would go out and I'd buy like shots for like 20, 30 people. And I'm a person as well where it's like, I'm not no pushover, and I'm not going to sit here and do it to flaunt or to flex or to try to look cool. I genuinely love celebrating people, and my people around me would tell you that like no other. Like DeMarcus is not one that's going to go out here and spend hella money to try to like prove himself to no women or try to look cool. Like that was never the case. I just had moments where I was out and I'm like, let me just support my people. I've always been a person that just loves supporting his people. I love being able to take care of people. I love seeing other people have a good time, but I would also have a balance. Like I'm not going to be stupid and sit here, even when I was in college and still learning myself. I'm not going to buy just everybody's stuff and let people just take my money. Like that's not happening. Like my parents would. I mean, like, Marcus, we didn't raise you like that. Like, come on now. Like, you letting people just run over top of you. Like, that's not even in our family MO. Like, come on now. So did that, had those learning experiences, and then, I was kind of always behind and kind of catching up, but that was a good experience for me because it allowed me to be able to see what it's like to own my own, and it allowed me to see like how I can be able to spend things at my own leisure, but then also be able to look out and take care of myself and be able to be appreciative for the work that I was doing. And within that, I ended up teaching myself towards the end of sprint about stocks. And so this is where I want to kind of have a pivot here. But when it comes to stocks, right? Stocks are something, or investing in general, is something that's always talked about, but it's something that's not emphasized enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it right here, and then I'm going to create a part 2 so I can kind of just give you all some insight on like where to invest, how to get started. Again, this is not any type of financial advisor situation, but it's at least just kind of getting you into the mindset that starting small is just a key thing that you can do to get yourself going.